Lest this all be too depressing, we can at least find some virtue in the fact that the soldiers at least had pure motives: duty, patriotism, love of country, and so on. In fact, for most of the soldiers in the armies of the Great War, the motives were the same, whether they fought for the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Tsardom of Bulgaria, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire, or Britain and her empire. What motivated most of these soldiers to serve and fight was that classic adage, God, King, and Country.
Oh, is Spanish gold for all tonight? For King and Country now we fight. Our aim is true, our cause is right. Is Spanish gold for all tonight?
Many people have heard it, but few truly understand it. It means that when a soldier fights, he does so in service of three things, in that order. He serves his God, he serves his king, the monarch of his nation, who is appointed by God to lead him, and he serves his country, his people. But the one I'd like to emphasize is the one that is so forgotten today, that the soldiers in World War I fought in service of their monarchy. They didn't volunteer to fight because of some vague notions of freedom, as is so often thought today. Nor was this notion of freedom the reason why they were willing to sacrifice so much. What motivated them, by and large, was service to king and country, which in those days were seen as inseparably linked.
Pretty accurate.
To be Russian was to be a loyal subject of the Tsar, emperor and autocrat of all the Russians, who the peasantry lovingly called the Little Father, calling to mind the Heavenly Father who put him in place. The history of Austria was bound up with the history of the imperial royal house of Habsburg, and to be Austrian meant to be a loyal follower of the House of Habsburg and share in the legacy of being the successor state to the successor state of the Holy Roman Empire and the defenders of Europe for hundreds of years.
And the conquerors Europe during much of that time as well.
The history and culture of the individual German states was I meant defenders from Muslim invasion.
That is very much it. Yeah, even Islam's strongest couldn't take on.
They couldn't get past the Habsburgs.
When they were fully focused, it didn't matter that the Muslims actually had the more advanced army at the time. There were just too many of them,
and they never got past Austria. So without Austria, they could have
they got into Austria, but they never got past it.
Exactly, never got past it. The history and culture of the individual German states was alive in their individual monarchs, and reigning at the top of this union was the German Kaiser, representing all Germans as well as the unique history of the Kingdom of Prussia. And of course, to be British did not mean merely a resident of the United Kingdom, but rather it meant to be a subject of the King, or Queen, of Britain, and a part of an entity much greater than oneself, the British Empire, and later British Commonwealth. In the spirit of this, we shall look at our last sketch. Here it is.
Almost done, I assume?
Almost done. We've just got this last sketch, then a bit of, then the conclusion. More tea. I'll have to make a new pot this afternoon for tea time. Yes, I do have tea time, besides just in our videos. Actually, I think you already knew that. What you said about tea being an acquired taste is very true, though. It took me, I think, 2 or 3 times before I got. Mind you, at first I tried it with
lots of
with milk
cream
and sugar,
milk,
but I found out I like it even better just with honey and no milk.
Hey, to each their own. Alright. This stuff smells better than what you had in that bottle.
It smelled?
Yeah, the stuff smelled bad for me.
Really?
Food-wise.
Huh. Maybe the bottle still smelled like wine. It's possible. I noticed that my grandparents' wine smells horrible and tastes even worse.
Probably they seem to like it.
Yes. It's bitter. Very, very bitter.
Yeah,
But
maybe
they don't
like
like
that.
sweet things. Or at least my grandmother doesn't. Anyway, we're getting a bit off topic.
Speaking of sweet things...
Which reminds me I should... Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more.
Yeah, the candy upstairs. I'm living, I'm
Actually, that's fitting. The lounge is where we men get together and be ourselves and have a bit of a laugh together.
Yeah, you knucklehead.
You cabbage head, you.
Cabbage head?
Yes, cabbage head. That's what Jasper called Horace in 101 Dalmatians.
That's the best you can come up with.
I was on the spot.
I'm not a cabbage head. I don't look like
and
a
I'm
cabbage.
not a knucklehead.
They are.
If I put a cabbage on your head, would that make you a cabbage head?
No, it just means there's a cabbage on my head.
Well, then when you did it, it's just there's a knuckle on my head. Or rather, there are knuckles on my head.
Yeah, knuckles. Shall we continue?
We're definitely... we won't put these in the main video itself, but they're definitely going into a blooper reel.
Yeah, this can be funny. Oh wait, I think I'm about to shoot. Why are you laughing? I go, why I'm laughing? Why are you laughing?
Because you looked like you were trying to either hold it in or
no,
force
I
it
don't
out.
hold it in. I just shoot. I mean, obviously I have to lift one up because big cheeks and all that, but
big cheeks. You can.
I have a big
do it
butt,
while
so I need to put one leg out so I can properly chew it out. Otherwise, it becomes very uncomfortable. And otherwise, it kind of just squeezes. Anyways, let's not go there.
Actually, I'm having
You're about to pass gas too?
No. I need to go see a man about a dog.
Oh.
As you can see, the sketch was both funny and deeply monarchist.
How do you figure?
Look at the details. When Private Tommy John asks the Canadian soldier if he's accidentally wandered into the French army trench, the soldier says no, showing that the Canadiens, which is to say the francophone residents of the Dominion of Canada, know full well that they are not fighting as part of the French army, but rather are part of the British Empire. The Canadiens are British.
Canadians or Canadians?
No. Canadiens. That's the term for... That was... You see, Canadian is a term that developed from Canadien, spelled differently with an IE at the end. That was the word used to describe the French residents of that.
Okay, fair enough.
Then it was IA and developed as when Confederation happened, but Canadien was still used in just the French-speaking areas. The British soldier from the Commonwealth of Australia is even blunter about it, as Australians usually are.
Where are the British forces?
Now just hang on a tick, mate. We are part of the British forces, you cheeky larrikin. Your lot are up there.
And to top it all off, we get the British soldier from the Union of South Africa saying,
"You want to head down here, do a left at the West Indians, then a right at the Gurkhas, and then head straight through the Indian Division and stop just before you get to the New Zealanders. All right? God save the King!"
This is an extremely patriotic monarchist message, and it reminds us of something we so often forget today. The Queen, most would agree, is British. But what is British? The Queen had an English father, a Scottish mother, belongs to a German royal house, and has ancestry going back to numerous nations. Not so very long ago, one could be born and raised in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, India, South Africa, Jamaica, Honduras, Guyana, New Guinea, or even further back, New York, Virginia, or South Carolina, and still be considered British. All of these countries are British, which is why the British monarch is no more foreign in Canada than they are in England, Scotland, Wales, or Ireland. No less do they belong in South Africa or British Guiana than in Australia or New Zealand. For 90% of mankind's history, nationality, so to speak, was determined not by location, but by blood. It amazes me that so many people take the opposite view today, because with how much we know today about DNA, You'd think, if anything, this would be even more obvious than it was then.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said that nationality should be determined by blood, but is it feasible? Does it mean that, for example, Australia belongs to the Aborigines and the whites are still British?
This is a complicated issue for many people precisely because modern thinking has changed the way people view nationality, as one is then imposing a modern entity, Australia, on a time when it didn't exist. It's kind of like the people who say St. Nicholas was born in Turkey, not understanding that at the time he lived, Turkey didn't exist as the Turks had not migrated there yet and created it. At the time of his life, it was called Anatolia, or Asia Minor, and was populated by Greeks, who at that time inhabited much of that Greek region most familiar today as Byzantium, which would later become the Byzantine Empire's heartland, with its Greekness stretching from modern-day Albania and North Macedonia to Cyprus and halfway across the Anatolian Peninsula.
The point?
Oh, right. Australia did not belong to the Aborigines at any point because Australia was a British colony, built by British colonists according to British law and customs. The land Australia sits on may have belonged to the Aborigines, but they were doing nothing with it. So, someone else came along and made a successful, productive country out of it. And that country that exists today is British.
With quotation marks.
No, not with quotation marks. That's modern nationality thinking, that.
Well, I'm sorry. I have been formed by my time. I'm not a nationalist like you. I
I'm not a
may
nationalist,
see...
I'm-
Sorry, not a nationalist. I'm not a monarchist like you. I may see some benefits to it, but my mind is still... Honestly, actually, I don't even really care about governments anymore.
You're apathetic, and that's...
very much so.
Quite frankly, if you weren't apathetic, I think I would have convinced you by now. But you're apathetic, which makes you hard to convince of anything.
Plus, I'm stubborn as a mule, as my
Yes.
parents have found out, so...
Yes, apathetic and stubborn are not a good combination.
It makes things entertaining for me, because everyone always is trying to convince me of stuff. I'm just laughing at you on the inside, so go keep trying.
Well, I will. And the thing is, I've been praying about it, too.
You cheeky limey. It's better than the other thing I wanted to say.
A more difficult example, perhaps, is Canada, due to the division between English and French Canada. However, this wasn't always such an issue. When the British won the French and Indian War, Quebec, at that time known as New France, became part of British North America, but was allowed to keep its language, law, land claims, customs, and religion. This so won over the upper echelons of society in Quebec, both the aristocrats and the clerics, that when the American Revolutionary War broke out, the leadership in Quebec was explicit in denouncing it.
Interesting.
We also know that Bishop Jean-Oliver Briand threatened to excommunicate, that is, cut off from the sacraments, anyone who supported the Republican rebels, and even excommunicated the famous Father John Carroll of Baltimore, Maryland, for his support of the revolution. Yes, believe it or not, originally Quebec was not only loyal to the British Crown, but very loyal. And it was the church that was the most loyal. And with good reason. In addition to the biblical commands of loyalty towards one's God-given monarch, Quebec was also asking out of gratefulness to their British rulers. For had Quebec been given over to the Americans, there is little doubt that the French language, religion, customs, and culture preserved there would have been overwhelmed and soon forgotten, as is what happened with the French territory of Louisiana, where today the French language is rarely spoken and survives in little other than old names for locations.
The yikes.
One could say that the ancient regime of the Kingdom of France survived in Quebec and, rather than succumbing to Republican revolution, was simply placed under the protection of another monarchy. You can take that or leave it, but the fact is that while the rulers of Quebec changed, the type of government, as well as the language, culture, customs, and religion, did not. A considerable portion of the credit for the foundation of Canada goes to those American loyalists who fled to Canada because they wished to remain under the benevolent reign of His Majesty King George III, and wanted nothing to do with the Republican regime that had come to power in their former homeland. They had the choice to stay in a republic or move to a monarchy, and they chose to remain loyal and go where the monarch still reigned. Before the American Revolution, Canada had been mostly French Canada. But the exiled American loyalists had laid the foundation for English-speaking Canada, and the victory of Canadian troops against massive American armies in the War of 1812 later brought about a new sense of Canadian pride and national identity.
Burning down the lighthouse.
This identity was best described as how Canadians thought of themselves as being Canadian first and British second, because Canada itself was British. We were British not because of some vague citizenship papers, but because our nature itself was British at its core. Our culture was British, we spoke the same language as the British, we were governed according to British laws, and British blood ran through our veins. This whole idea of being British was based on uniting, not dividing the lands of the Empire. From the beginning, British was an amalgamation of English, Scottish, Welsh, and Irish, and even some French. It tied these cultures together and showed a united culture that was greater than the sum of its parts. That is why one could be born in the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, or even India and still be called British while at the same time remaining one's own nationality as well. Canadian Republicans who so detest the United States should keep in mind this part of the founding of their country, and remember that remaining loyal to king and country was the first and most paramount aspect that distinguished them from the United States. If these people had their way, the Dominion of Canada would basically be betraying their entire history in order to become the United States of Northern North America. They might as well petition to become the 51st state. Instead, I say, let us fight on for God, King, and country. And in the spirit of Remembrance Day, let us never forget that this is what our forefathers fought for on both sides of World War I.
It's Spanish gold for all tonight. For king and country now we fight. Our aim is true, our cause is right. It's Spanish gold for all tonight.
I'm the Blue Baron, defender of traditionalism. God bless you all, and remember, Fides Traditio Monarchia!
If you enjoyed this video, think about leaving a like, a comment, or subscribing so you can keep up with our videos and help us reach our first goal of 1,000 subs. Just hit the red button below the screen or hit the eagle icon which is on the screen. And hit the notification bell to enable notifications so you can be informed whenever a new video is uploaded.
If there's something you didn't like, why not try to, instead of just hitting the dislike button, actually comment and tell us what you feel we could be doing better in the future. Nobody ever got better by anonymous dislikes or negative comments that don't explain themselves, but constructive criticism can be a helpful tool. If you found our topic interesting and want to learn more, the links to the articles I used will be in the description, and they make for very good reading material. And as always, if you enjoy our videos, think about sharing them with friends to help us get new viewers, or supporting us on Patreon. Even just a few dollars per month goes a long way when it's multiplied by the number of people that do it, and you'd be helping us to continue making these videos for a long time to come.